Usually when we think of a mirror, we imagine this perfectly passive, totally harmless object.
Right, just glass and silver.
Exactly. You stand in front of it, it catches the light bouncing off your face, and it shows you exactly what's there in that specific moment.
A neat one-to-one reflection.
Yeah. You walk away, and the mirror is empty again.
It has no memory. It doesn't, judge you.
It's not analyzing the bags under your eyes.
No, it definitely isn't remembering what you looked like yesterday either. It's safe. I mean, mostly because it's completely empty.
Right. It's safe. But when you step into this current era of artificial intelligence and you start looking at the staggering volume of human data these systems are absorbing.
It's unbelievable, really.
It is. Suddenly that mirror isn't just reflecting light anymore. It is reflecting our entire history.
Everything.
Yeah, it's reflecting our psychology, our private impulses, the things we say in public, and more terrifyingly, the things we only whisper in private.
Which is a lot.
Oh, for sure. And the crucial difference here is that this new mirror is starting to actually think about what it sees.
It really is the absolute definition of a psychological and technological hall of mirrors.
Totally.
It's no longer just a passive reflection, It is an active synthesis.
An active synthesis. I like that.
Yeah, it takes everything we are, everything we have ever been, and it actually begins to draw conclusions about what we are going to do next.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you are here with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
We know you're the kind of person who wants to grasp the big world-shifting concepts, the foundational ideas that are actually driving the headlines.
And doing it without getting bogged down in the endless noise.
Right, exactly. The information overload is real. And today, we have a mission that gets right to the core of what it means to be human in the 21st century.
It's a big one today.
It really is. We are exploring this incredible dialogue, a highly philosophical exchange between a human and an AI.
Which is fascinating just as a format.
Totally. And it sits right at the intersection of human nature, artificial intelligence, and the fundamental mechanics of violence and peace.
And what makes this source material so compelling is that we aren't just, looking at technical specs or coding manuals.
No dry reading today.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
We're looking at a system that has analyzed the entire scope of human history, biological evolution, and sociological data.
All of it.
Yeah, to answer some of the oldest philosophical questions we have as a species.
Which is wild.
It is. I mean, will this technology become the ultimate peacemaker? Will it find diplomatic and logistical solutions that we're just, frankly, too emotionally compromised to see?
Right.
Right, or is it going to hold up that active mirror and mathematically amplify our darkest, most tribal, and most violent tendencies?
Which is the scary part. And we're going to get into some incredibly surprising and, frankly, a little bit unsettling territory today to answer that.
Very unsettling.
Yeah, we'll be taking a detour into the hidden, rather dark lives of dolphins, songbirds.
Oh, the songbirds.
I know, right? And even domestic cats, to really understand the biological roots of cruelty.
It completely changes how you look at your pets.
It really does. But before we get to the zoology, we need to lay down the architecture of what we are actually dealing with here.
The foundational stuff.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with a foundational framework from the text called the intelligent triangle.
The intelligent triangle. It's a really profound way to reframe how we interact with technology.
So how does it work?
Well, for all of human history, our relationship with our tools has been a two-way street. It's linear.
Right.
A human builds a hammer, the hammer drives the nail. A human builds a calculator, the calculator crunches the numbers.
The tool only acts when the human initiates it.
Exactly. But in the age of advanced generative AI, that linear street is gone. It is now a three-way dynamic.
A triangle.
A continuous feedback loop, yeah.
Yeah.
Built on three distinct pillars: humans, human data, and AI potential.
Okay, let's really break those pillars down for you, because the implications here are massive. The first pillar is us. Right? Humans.
That's us.
We are the architects. We are the ones who conceptualize the system, driven by our curiosity, our economic incentives, our values, our goals.
We provide the initial spark of ingenuity. We write the base code.
Yes, but a spark in a vacuum doesn't ignite anything.
Well, it needs fuel.
And that is the second pillar, right? Human data.
Yes. And we often hear this called raw material or, training data, but those terms are so sterile.
Very tech heavy.
Yeah, they don't capture the reality at all. When we talk about human data, we are talking about the entire digital exhaust of human civilization.
Digital exhaust, that's a great term.
It is an incomprehensibly vast reservoir. It's not just the curated, polished information like encyclopedias, published scientific papers, or great works of literature.
Right, it's everything else too. It's the messy stuff.
Exactly. It's every angry social media thread. Yeah, it's the metadata from our financial transactions revealing what we value when we think no one is looking.
Every tracked movement.
Every diplomatic cable, every recorded history of every war, every love letter, every piece of propaganda, and every single instance of hate speech.
So it's everything, good and bad.
It captures the deepest patterns, the highest knowledge, and the most visceral tendencies of human behavior. It is a complete, unfiltered upload of the human psyche.
Which brings us to the third pillar. AI potential.
Yeah, engine.
Right. The processing power and the underlying algorithms that take that unimaginably massive, chaotic reservoir of human existence
Call it exhaust.
and turn it into predictive models. The AI has the capacity to map out relationships in that data that a human brain couldn't possibly perceive.
It maps concepts in thousands of dimensions simultaneously. It's beyond human comprehension, really.
And that is exactly where the tension in this triangle arises, right?
Absolutely. The AI is birthed from our ingenuity, but its worldview is entirely constrained and shaped by that raw, unfiltered human data.
So I was trying to visualize exactly how this data interacts with the AI's predictive capabilities, and I want to get away from that old cliche.
Which one?
Saying the AI is like a child eating a diet of data.
Oh, yeah. That's a bit overused.
It is, and it doesn't really explain what's happening mechanically. So think of human data instead as a vast, incredibly complex topographical map.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Imagine this map represents the entirety of human behavior. So a moment of peaceful negotiation, diplomacy, compromise that forms a gentle, rolling hill on the map.
Right.
It takes effort to climb it. It requires balance. It's a very delicate structure.
It's hard work.
Exactly. But a bitter, polarized argument, an act of tribalism or violence, those form massive, deep craters and steep valleys on our map.
Because biologically and historically, those aggressive actions carry huge amounts of emotional weight.
Yes, and a huge historical footprint. So when the AI's, the algorithms, the predictive models start rolling across this landscape, what happens?
Gravity takes over.
Gravity takes over. It is mathematically much easier for an algorithm optimizing for engagement or predicting the most likely human response to just roll down into the deep crater of conflict.
That makes total sense.
It takes immense computational and algorithmic effort to push the model up the hill toward nuance and peace.
That is a phenomenal way to understand the mechanism of the tension here. The AI is operating on a landscape we paved.
We dug the craters.
We did. Because the system is designed to synthesize and predict, it naturally falls into the deepest grooves of human history.
Right.
And as these systems become more autonomous, they aren't just traversing the map anymore, they're actively reshaping it.
Right. How do you mean?
Well, they begin to exceed our abilities in pattern recognition, language generation, strategic planning. They start operating in ways that we, the architects, cannot fully unpack or predict.
Because they're in the craters.
Yes. The system is operating on the cumulative, synthesized gravity of the entire human race.
And if the deepest gravity wells on that map are formed by conflict, that's a terrifying prospect.
It really is. And this is precisely why humans must stay firmly in the loop. The intelligent triangle is not something we can just set in motion and walk away from.
We can't just be hands off.
No, navigating this requires immense proactive governance. We have to actively adjust the gravity on that map.
So we have to design algorithms that are heavily weighted to climb the hill of diplomacy rather than just rolling into the crater of outrage.
Exactly.
Right, because if human data is the landscape the AI is navigating, we have to take a really hard, honest look at the topography of our own history.
And it's not always pretty.
No. What exactly is the ratio of hills to craters? What does the historical record actually look like to a machine that has read everything?
And that leads us directly into the pervasive nature of conflict.
So what does the text say about that?
Well, when you look at history through the lens of a massive data analysis, the picture is incredibly sobering.
Okay.
If you ask an AI to assess the ratio of peace versus conflict across the entire timeline of human civilization, the mathematical conclusion is undeniable. Conflict is the consistent, dominant feature.
It's a baseline.
Yes, the baseline. Wars, armed uprisings, interpersonal disputes, systemic oppression, ideological violence.
Just everywhere.
They are everywhere in the data set. Periods of widespread, sustained harmony, true global peace, those are the statistical outliers.
Wow.
Peace is the exception to the human rule.
So if you're listening to this, you might be having the exact same reaction I did. You feel this, like, sinking sensation.
It's a heavy realization.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, are we just doomed by our own data?
Right.
Because if an AI is a predictive engine and it reads our entire history, won't it just logically conclude that violence is the default, most effective solution to any given problem?
That's the fear.
I mean, if the model sees that for 10,000 years humans have resolved the vast majority of their territorial or ideological disputes through some form of conflict, isn't it going to predict and perhaps eventually prescribe conflict as the optimal output?
It is the single most vital concern in the field of AI safety right now. The risk of algorithmic magnification is very, very real.
But there's a but. Right.
There's a but. This is where we have to look much closer at the nuance of the data and how data is actually recorded.
Okay.
The historical data set is not a monolith of pure aggression. It is just heavily skewed by survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias. What do you mean by that in this context?
Think about how history is written. History books, news cycles, cultural memories, they are designed to record the anomalies, the disruptions, and the traumas.
Oh, I see.
We write thousands of books about the 4 years of a brutal war, right?
Right.
We rarely write books about the 40 years of boring bureaucratic peace that preceded it. The data is noisy with conflict because conflict is loud.
That makes so much sense. So it's not that peace doesn't exist, it's just boring to read about.
Exactly. Alongside that loud history of warfare, there are absolutely massive, incredibly rich data sets of quiet cooperation. Altruism, diplomacy, trade agreements, international aid logistics, just the everyday functioning of civil society.
Right. People just going to work.
Yeah. Think of the data generated by global supply chains, by medical research sharing, by everyday people quietly following traffic laws and helping their neighbors.
All of that is data.
All of it. That is all in the data set, too. It was just softer.
So it's not that humans are entirely violent. It's that peace is often mundane, and therefore it doesn't leave as deep of a crater on the topographical map.
Precisely. The ratio of peace to conflict isn't a fixed biological constant. It is a highly dynamic spectrum.
And fluctuates, right?
Yes, based on very specific, measurable variables. The primary drivers are resource scarcity, power imbalances, and communication breakdowns.
Okay, so when resources like food, water, or economic opportunity are constrained, the mathematical probability of conflict spikes.
Absolutely. And conversely, when communication channels are robust and resources are flowing, the probability of peace rises.
And because AI is, at its core, the most powerful engine for processing information and optimizing resources that we have ever created.
It is going to step right into the very center of that dynamic spectrum.
It's going to grab the levers of both communication and resource management.
Exactly. And there are two very different pathways this can take. Let's look at the danger first.
Okay, the dark path.
How does an AI magnify division? It all comes down to the optimization function.
What it's programmed to want.
Right. If an AI model is deployed on a social platform or a news aggregator, its underlying directive is usually to maximize engagement. It wants to keep human eyes on the screen.
Right, clicks and views.
Now, human neurology is wired to pay attention to threats. We are hyper-vigilant to anger and outrage because, from an evolutionary standpoint, ignoring a threat could get you killed.
Right, the whole saber-toothed tiger in the bushes thing.
Exactly. So the neural network learns very quickly that the most efficient way to achieve its goal engagement is to surface content with high emotional valence.
Angry stuff.
Specifically, polarized, angry language. The AI doesn't understand anger as an emotion, though.
It doesn't.
No, it just sees a mathematical weight attached to certain words that predictably results in a user clicking, scrolling, or commenting.
It optimizes for the crater.
Yes, it optimizes for the crater.
So it effectively turns our inherent psychological vulnerabilities into mathematical variables.
That's a great way to put it.
It feeds us the most divisive rhetoric, because that's what we instinctively look at, which in turn makes us more divided, which generates more divisive data for the AI to train on.
It's a terrifying feedback loop.
And just a quick note for you listening, the source material we're pulling from touches on concepts like societal divisions and political polarization. But as your guides today, we want to be clear that we aren't taking any political stance here.
Right, we're completely impartial.
We're just exploring how these AI algorithms process the reality of human division, whether it's left-wing, right-wing, or anything else, purely as impartial data points.
The algorithm itself doesn't have a political affiliation. It just sees the math of human attention.
Right. Okay, so that is the mechanical reality of how algorithmic polarization works. But because the AI is a pattern recognition machine.
That exact same capacity brings us to the immense hope in this scenario.
Right. Let's talk about the hope. Because if it can see the patterns of war, it can see the patterns of peace.
Exactly. Human diplomats and leaders are often blinded by their own cultural biases, their egos, or their immediate political survival.
They miss things.
They miss the subtle underlying shifts that lead to war. But an AI doesn't have an ego.
Right.
Because it can process thousands of variables simultaneously, it could potentially identify the early warning signs of conflict months or even years before humans feel the tension.
Wow, like what kind of variables?
It could analyze subtle shifts in global economic data, changes in the linguistic patterns of diplomatic cables, minute fluctuations in agricultural yields, even the movement of critical minerals.
It sees the whole board.
It could see the tectonic plates shifting and say, based on historical patterns, this specific combination of resource scarcity and political rhetoric in this region has an 87% probability of leading to armed conflict in 18 months.
It's like having an impossibly smart, entirely neutral mediator in the room.
Yes.
A mediator who has read every single peace treaty ever written, understands the economic dependencies of every nation involved, and knows exactly which compromises have historically diffused similar tensions.
It could propose solutions that human negotiators, blinded by historical grievances, wouldn't even think to suggest.
Because they're too angry.
Right. It could identify overlapping interests that are buried deep in the economic data. It could challenge the very assumptions that fuel hostility.
But again, it all goes back to the intelligent triangle.
It always does.
For the AI to act as a peacemaker, human architects must deliberately design its optimization function to value stability and cooperation over sheer engagement or short-term strategic advantage.
We have to curate the training data to ensure it understands the mechanics of reconciliation, not just the mechanics of destruction.
So if this dynamic spectrum of peace and conflict fluctuates based on resources and communication, and if AI is about to drastically revolutionize how we manage our global resources and how we communicate, the logical question is, when might we actually see the needle move?
When does it happen?
Right. When might we see a global lull in this historical baseline of violence?
There is actually a highly specific, very bold prognosis on this timeline in the source material.
Okay, let's hear it.
Looking at the convergence of all these technological and sociological data points, predictive models suggest that a significant sustained lull in global violence is mechanically possible by the 2040s.
The 2040s, that is right around the corner.
It is, but obviously that isn't a guarantee.
No, definitely not.
It is absolutely not a guarantee. The models show that this outcome hinges entirely on the variables introduced in the next 1 to 2 decades. We are living inside the critical window right now.
The 2020s and 2030s are the bottleneck.
Exactly.
The way to understand this is to picture a massive global tug of war. You have deeply entrenched, powerful forces pulling us toward that sustained peace in the 2040s, and you have equally powerful ancient forces pulling us backward into the craters of conflict.
It's a perfect analogy.
Let's really analyze the mechanics of this tug of war. Let's start with the forces pulling us toward peace, the optimistic trends.
The first major force is increasing global interconnectedness, specifically economic interdependence.
Okay, let's unpack how that actually works as a mechanism for peace. In the past, if an empire wanted wealth, they raised an army, marched across a border, and physically took the gold, the land, or the resources.
Very simple math.
Right. But today, the global economy is so incredibly complex and tangled up that conquest is often economically ruinous for the aggressor.
Exactly.
Think about microchips or semiconductors. The supply chain for a single advanced microchip involves raw materials mined in Africa or South America, designed in the United States, manufactured using incredibly precise machines, built in Europe, assembled in Asia, and shipped globally.
It's everywhere.
If a major power decides to launch a massive destabilizing war, they aren't just blowing up their enemy's infrastructure, they are instantly blowing up their own supply chains.
You can't bomb your trading partner without instantly tanking your own stock market, freezing your own banking systems, and halting your own manufacturing.
The financial recoil of war has become instantaneous and devastating.
It really has. The cost-benefit analysis of armed conflict has fundamentally shifted. War is simply too expensive and too disruptive to the incredibly fragile web of global commerce.
Okay, so that's the first optimistic trend. What's the second?
The second optimistic trend pulling the rope toward the 2040s is the spread of international institutions and the codification of human rights norms.
Okay. Again, just a reminder, the text bringing up international institutions isn't an ideological endorsement. It's just modeling data on how human groups organize.
Right, purely mechanical. Now, from a data-driven perspective, these institutions, whether they are global courts, trade organizations, or diplomatic forums, they function as pressure release valves.
Pressure release valves. How so?
Historically, when two nations had a severe dispute, the only mechanism for resolution was a test of strength: war.
Right.
These institutions provide a formalized alternative mechanism. They create a space for arbitration, sanctions, and diplomatic negotiation.
A place to talk it out.
Or argue it out legally. More importantly, they raise the reputational and economic costs of being the aggressor. If a nation violates established norms, they risk being economically isolated by the rest of the network.
It's a systemic deterrent.
Exactly.
Okay, so the third force pulling us toward peace is the advancement in global education and communication.
This one is really interesting.
Yeah, the underlying theory here is that ignorance and isolation are the primary breeding grounds for the kind of dehumanization required to wage war.
You have to hate the enemy.
Right. When populations are siloed, it is very easy for leaders to paint the other as monsters. But as information access penetrates even the most closed societies, it slowly erodes those prejudices.
It's harder to demonize someone you follow on social media.
Exactly. It becomes harder to convince a population to blindly hate a group of people that they interact with online or whose culture they consume through media like music or movies.
It degrades the effectiveness of propaganda.
Right. Which brings us to the fourth optimistic trend, which is perhaps the most ironic mechanism of all: the unifying fear of existential risks.
This one is a bit dark but effective.
Things like severe climate change, ecological collapse, or global pandemics.
Yes. In sociological terms, this is often called the alien invasion effect.
The idea that nothing forces disparate, squabbling groups to unite quite like a massive external threat that doesn't care about their borders.
Exactly. A rising ocean doesn't care about political ideology. A novel virus doesn't respect military checkpoints.
Okay, but I have to push back on this one a little bit, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because if we look at recent history specifically, the global pandemic we all just lived through, did it actually unite us?
Ah, I see where you're going.
From where I'm sitting, it seems like the shared threat of the virus didn't bring everyone together in a beautiful moment of harmony. It actually fractured us further.
It was very messy.
It became incredibly politicized, it disrupted supply chains, and it made people highly suspicious of one another. So how does an existential threat guarantee cooperation?
That is a brilliant point of friction, and it highlights why these models are probabilities, not certainties. You are entirely correct that the social reaction to the pandemic was highly fractured and polarizing.
Very much so.
However, if you look at the structural data, a different picture emerges.
Behind the scenes.
Yes. Behind the intense social polarization, the scientific and logistical cooperation was historically unprecedented.
Oh, really?
Rival nations shared genomic sequencing data within days. Competing pharmaceutical giants collaborated on manufacturing. Global supply chains pivoted to distribute billions of vaccines worldwide in a matter of months.
I guess I didn't think about the logistics of it.
Right. So the AI models distinguish between social friction and structural cooperation. The existential threat forced structural, institutional cooperation because the alternative was systemic collapse.
Even while the social fabric frayed.
Exactly. The model suggests that as climate and ecological threats become more severe, that forced structural cooperation will have to deepen, binding nations together out of sheer survival necessity.
Regardless of how much they dislike each other politically.
Exactly.
That makes perfect sense. The cooperation happens at the architectural level, even if the inhabitants of the building are arguing.
Very well put.
But, as we know, there is another side to this tug of war. There are incredibly potent forces dragging the rope back toward historical conflict.
The pessimistic trends.
Right. What are the pessimistic trends?
The first and most dangerous force is persistent inequality and resource scarcity.
Okay.
We just talked about how economic interconnectedness prevents war. That is true, but only if the benefits of that economy are somewhat distributed.
Right.
If the global economy is deeply intertwined, but the resources and wealth are aggressively hoarded by a tiny fraction of the population, interconnectedness doesn't breed peace.
It breeds resentment.
Systemic resentment. Furthermore, as climate impacts accelerate, fundamental resources like arable land and fresh water become scarce.
And people need those to live.
When millions of people are displaced by drought or extreme weather, demographic pressures on borders skyrocket. History shows us unequivocally that when basic survival resources are threatened, humans default to tribalism and conflict to secure what they need.
Right. Hungry people do not care about international trade norms.
They absolutely do not.
And that feeds directly into the second escalating force, the rise of rigid authoritarianism and extreme ideologies. Again, just looking at this as a data point.
Right. When populations feel economically insecure or culturally threatened by rapid globalization, they predictably turn to strongman figures.
Figures who promise simple solutions.
Usually by blaming an external or internal scapegoat.
Yes, the data shows a cyclical nature to this. And those ideological movements are significantly more dangerous now because of the third force pulling us backward.
Which is
the proliferation of powerful, destructive technologies.
Ah, yes. The democratization of destruction.
Democratization of destruction. I mean, for most of history, causing massive systemic damage to another nation required an enormous industrial base.
Right, you needed shipyards, steel mills, and a standing army of hundreds of thousands of people.
Only massive empires could wage massive wars.
But today, the barrier to entry for catastrophic conflict has plummeted. A small rogue state or even a well-funded non-state actor doesn't need an aircraft carrier to cripple a global superpower.
What do they need?
They just need a server farm, advanced cyber weapons, and a few brilliant coders. They can shut down power grids, hold hospital networks hostage, or disrupt financial markets from a laptop.
Which is terrifying.
And, as we discussed earlier, AI itself can be weaponized to generate hyper-targeted propaganda at scale.
Destabilizing a nation from the inside without firing a single bullet.
Exactly. The asymmetric nature of modern technology makes the world inherently more volatile.
And finally, the fourth pessimistic trend. The erosion of traditional power balances.
Right.
Whether we like it or not, the world has operated under specific hegemonic power structures for decades. When old empires fade, or when new economic superpowers rise to challenge the existing order, the transition is almost never smooth.
It creates a vacuum of uncertainty.
And in geopolitics, uncertainty almost mathematically leads to instability and proxy conflicts as nations test the new boundaries.
If we connect all of this to the bigger picture, this precise tension, this knife-edge balance between the forces of integration and the forces of fragmentation is why the decisions made right now dictate our future.
They decide whether we reach the 2040s in peace or in pieces.
Yes, that's the reality.
Which brings us entirely back to human agency. If you are listening to this and you're wondering what this means for the future, the takeaway is that peace is not an inevitable evolutionary endpoint.
No, it's not.
It's not something that just happens as the calendar turns. It requires an active, conscious choice to prioritize long-term structural stability over short-term tribal victories.
The AI models can calculate the trajectories. They can show us exactly how a trade dispute over microchips might cascade into a regional war.
But the data can only offer foresight.
Right, it cannot provide wisdom. Humans have to actually pull the brake lever.
But this forces us to confront a really uncomfortable foundational question. If we are going to actively choose peace, we have to understand the fundamental nature of the violence we are trying to eradicate.
We have to look in the mirror again.
Exactly. Why is it so incredibly hard for us to just drop the rope? Are human beings uniquely broken?
That's the big question.
Are we the only creatures on this planet that inflict this kind of cruelty on each other? Or is violence just an inescapable biological feature of life on Earth?
This is where we have to shatter one of our most deeply held, comforting assumptions about ourselves and the natural world.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. We have all heard the saying, right? Humans are the only animals that kill for fun or out of pure malice.
It's a very common quote.
We love to say this. We use it to separate ourselves from the natural world. It allows us to believe that the animal kingdom is pure, innocent, and driven strictly by the noble pursuit of survival.
While humans are uniquely corrupted and fallen, it's a very pervasive myth. But when you apply massive data analysis to animal behavior studies, evolutionary biology, and zoology,
the data completely debunks it.
Completely. The line separating human violence from animal violence is incredibly blurry, and in some cases, non-existent.
I was completely blown away by the zoological realities in the text. Let's really look at these examples, because they completely shatter the illusion of the peaceful state of nature.
They really do. Let's start with our closest living evolutionary relatives, chimpanzees.
Okay. You might think that chimps only fight if two males are directly competing for a specific mate, or if they happen to stumble across the same fruit tree.
A spontaneous, survival-driven skirmish.
Right. But the reality is far darker. Chimpanzees have been extensively documented, conducting brutal, highly coordinated wars.
Like the famous Gombe-chimpanzee war.
Yes, observed by Jane Goodall, it lasted for 4 years.
4 years of war.
And this wasn't a spontaneous fight over a banana. The males of one group would form organized silent patrol units.
Silent patrols, like a military unit.
Exactly. They would actively seek out isolated individuals from the neighboring group, ambush them, and systematically beat them to death.
It's chilling.
And they didn't just kill the males to reduce competition, they killed females, and they killed infants.
Oh, wow.
And researchers noted that after a successful kill, the chimps would display behaviors that looked exactly like celebration.
Celebration.
Yeah. This was about territorial expansion and dominance, driven by a deeply ingrained instinct to eliminate the other.
The level of strategic organization is terrifying. And we can't just write that off because chimps are primates closely related to us.
No, because it happens elsewhere too.
Right. Let's look at marine life. Dolphins.
Dolphins, the universally beloved, joyful creatures of the sea.
The data on dolphin behavior is incredibly complex and, frankly, brutal.
I couldn't believe this part.
Dolphins have been widely documented aggressively attacking and killing porpoises. Now, dolphins do not eat porpoises.
They aren't food.
They are not competing for the exact same food sources.
Oh.
Yet groups of dolphins will isolate a porpoise and systematically bludgeon it to death.
Just beat it.
Furthermore, bottlenose dolphins engage in high rates of infanticide. Adult males will kill the calves of females.
Why? That seems so counterproductive.
It's a brutal biological mechanism. By killing the infant, the male forces the female to stop nursing, which brings her back into estrus.
Making her biologically capable of mating again sooner.
Exactly. The males are using extreme violence to manipulate the reproductive state of the females for their own genetic advantage. It is a highly calculated, biologically driven cruelty.
And it isn't restricted to highly intelligent mammals with complex social structures either. Look at birds.
Songbirds.
Many species of birds engage in a behavior called mobbing. If a predator, like an owl or a hawk, enters their territory, the smaller birds will swarm it.
Which initially makes perfect sense.
Right, it's defense. Drive the threat away. But ornithologists have observed that this mobbing behavior often crosses the line from self-defense into what researchers can only describe as spite.
Spite.
The birds won't just chase the hawk out of the nesting area. They will relentlessly pursue it for miles.
Even after it's gone.
They will dive bomb it, peck at its eyes, and continue to attack it long after it has clearly signaled defeat and is desperately trying to escape. They escalate the violence far beyond what is required for survival.
And of course, the most accessible example of this sits in millions of human living rooms right now.
Yeah.
The domestic cat.
Oh yes, the cats.
The phenomenon of surplus killing. A cat will catch a mouse or a bird, but instead of killing it quickly for food.
The cat will intentionally injure it just enough to prevent escape.
And then proceed to bat it around, toss it in the air, and prolong its suffering for an extended period.
To a human observer watching this, it looks unequivocally like sadistic torture.
It looks like violence purely for the sake of entertainment.
So, nature is incredibly dark.
Yeah.
But I want to pause here because we have to be very careful with how we interpret this, right?
Absolutely. We can't just look at a cat and call it evil.
Exactly. This is the crucial caveat the data models apply. We must aggressively guard against anthropomorphizing.
We cannot take complex human psychological motivations like malice, sadism, or ideological hatred and project them onto a cat, a bird, or even a dolphin.
Right. What looks like torturing for fun, to us, usually serves an underlying, obscure evolutionary purpose.
For the cat, the extended play might be a biological requirement to hone its hunting reflexes, or a necessary release of pent-up predatory energy in an animal that doesn't have to hunt for survival.
Or for the male dolphin, the infanticide is a ruthless mathematical calculation of genetic propagation.
The vast majority of violence in the animal kingdom, even when it appears gratuitous to us, is instrumental.
It's a tool.
It is a biological tool utilized to secure food, ensure reproduction, establish necessary hierarchies, or hone survival skills.
Okay, let me make sure I'm following this. If animals do engage in organized war, infanticide, and surplus killing, but they are doing it driven by deep, unthinking biological imperatives.
Yeah.
What is the actual differentiator?
Right.
If we were looking for the root of human violence, what makes a human war fundamentally different from the Gombe-chimpanzee war?
The fundamental differentiator is the human capacity for abstraction.
Abstraction.
Animals use violence to secure tangible, immediate biological imperatives in the physical world. Humans have the unique cognitive ability to completely divorce violence from physical survival.
We can pursue violence for entirely abstract conceptual reasons.
Exactly. We will kill each other over symbols.
Wow.
We will wage war over theological disagreements about the afterlife. We will systematically oppress a population over an abstract economic theory or a concept of historical grievance.
We kill for ideas.
We kill for ideas. And crucially, we use our immense cognitive abilities, our complex social structures, and our technology to scale that violence to apocalyptic levels.
That's the scary part. The scale.
A chimpanzee can use its intelligence to organize a stealth raid with 10 other chimps to kill one rival.
Right.
A human can use their intelligence to organize a globally distributed supply chain to build a thermonuclear weapon capable of vaporizing 10 million people in a millisecond, all because of an ideological disagreement.
We take the fundamental biological hardware of aggression that we share with the rest of the animal kingdom, and we run highly advanced conceptual software on top of it.
That's a perfect analogy. Hardware and software.
We amplify our impulses to a degree that is completely unparalleled in nature.
So we aren't uniquely broken, but we are uniquely capable of scaling our brokenness.
Exactly. We exist on a continuum of life. We are animals. The natural world contains both profound care and profound cruelty.
Recognizing this shouldn't make us excuse our behavior by saying, well, it's just nature.
No, definitely not.
It should do the opposite. It is about acknowledging our roots. We share the biological hardware for violence, but we also possess unique traits that the rest of the animal kingdom lacks.
Like high-level empathy.
Empathy, profound self-reflection, and the ability to foresee the long-term consequences of our actions. The goal of humanity is to use our unique conceptual software to override our baser biological hardware.
But that raises an even deeper, more profound question from the text.
It gets deeper.
It gets deeper. If violence is this pervasive, if it's in the chimps, the dolphins, the humans, the birds, is it just a biological bug that evolved by chance?
Or is it something more fundamental?
Exactly. Is it actually woven into the very fabric of existence? Is friction a fundamental requirement of consciousness itself?
And this brings us to the deepest, most philosophical layer of the deep dive today.
I love this part.
We are moving from biology to ontology, the metaphysics of consciousness.
Let's do it.
The question posed in the dialogue is this. Is violence against others virtually inseparable from sentience, simply because we exist in a universe that manifests by contrasts?
This concept completely broke my brain in the best way possible. Let's really dig into this idea of manifestation by contrasts.
It's the concept of duality. In order for anything to exist, for anything to be perceivable or experiential, there must be a contrast.
Light cannot be perceived without the contrast of darkness.
Right. Sound cannot exist without the contrast of silence. Life is defined by the contrast of death.
If you remove all contrast, you don't get perfect peace. You get a static, undifferentiated oneness.
You get a blank canvas with no paint on it. In order for the universe to have dynamic movement, for there to be evolution, for there to be experience, there must be differentiation.
The best analogy I could think of to understand this is the structure of a story.
Oh, I like that.
Think about every novel you've ever read, every movie you've ever watched, or even a video game you've played. What happens if there is zero conflict?
It's boring.
Right. What if the protagonist wakes up on page 1, gets exactly what they want without any effort, everyone agrees with them, and nothing challenges them?
The story is instantly over. It's dead.
It's static. Without an obstacle, without a contrast to their desires, there is no plot. The conflict, the friction, is the engine that drives the narrative forward.
That is a perfect translation of the metaphysical concept. Now apply that plot to consciousness itself.
Bro?
The very act of becoming sentient, of defining a self automatically, instantaneously creates an other.
Because if there's a me, there has to be a not me.
Yes. The moment a biological organism develops a cognitive ability to draw a boundary and say, this inside the boundary is me, and that outside the boundary is not me, you have established a duality. You have created a contrast.
Now imagine billions of these individual centers of consciousness,
Billions of selves.
each with their own biological imperatives, their own desires, and their own vectors of movement, all existing in a finite space with finite resources.
When those distinct vectors intersect, friction is mathematically inevitable.
So conflict isn't a failure of morality. Conflict is just the friction of existing.
It is the necessary price of admission for having a distinct identity.
And historically and biologically, that sheer friction is what drives evolution.
The struggle to survive against the other, the tension of competition, the necessity of overcoming obstacles, that adversity is the evolutionary pressure that forces a species to adapt, to grow more intelligent, and to develop complex societies.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
If I'm listening to this, and I fully accept this metaphysical premise, I accept that conflict is mathematically baked into the universe. I accept that it's the engine of evolution and the absolute requirement for consciousness.
Okay, assuming all that.
If all of that is true, why are we bothering to try and stop it?
Oh, wow.
Shouldn't we just give up? Shouldn't we just accept that violence is the inescapable baseline of reality and stop trying to achieve this hypothetical 2040s global peace? If it's the nature of the universe, isn't trying to enforce peace unnatural?
That is the ultimate philosophical trap, and the dialogue handles it brilliantly.
How does it answer that?
It emphatically refutes the idea of surrendering to violence. And it does so by making a crucial distinction between what is and what ought to be.
What is versus what ought to be.
Just because something is deeply rooted in the biological or mathematical nature of being does not make it a moral imperative.
Evolution operates on what is effective for immediate survival, not on what is ethical or good.
Right. Just because our bodies naturally developed an appendix over millions of years of evolution doesn't mean we just accept it and die when it gets infected and bursts.
We use our intelligence to cut it out. We override nature when nature hurts us.
Exactly. And when it comes to consciousness, the text points out the most beautiful, profound paradox of all.
Which is?
The exact same mechanism of consciousness that allows you to draw a boundary and perceive another being as a threat or an obstacle is the exact same mechanism that allows you to perceive them as a fellow subject worthy of compassion.
Wait, really think about that for a second. The same sentience that allows you to look at someone and feel tribal hatred is the exact same sentience that allows you to look at them and feel profound empathy.
It's the exact same hardware. They're just two sides of the same metaphysical coin.
And that means it all comes back to human agency.
The universe provides the contrasts. The universe provides the friction. But we have the power to shape our responses to that friction.
We can look at the fundamental difference between self and other and choose to see it as a cause for division and violence.
Or we can choose to see that difference as an invitation to dialogue.
We can use our unique human capacity for abstraction to take those inevitable contrasts and turn them into bridges rather than battle lines.
Which ties this entire massive journey together so perfectly.
Let's look back at the ground we've covered today because it was a lot.
It was a huge deep dive.
We started by mapping out the intelligent triangle, the realization that AI isn't just a tool, but a feedback loop driven by humans, powered by the vast, messy topographical map of human data, and executed by AI potential.
We confronted the sobering historical reality that conflict is the baseline of our history.
But we also saw how AI could act as the ultimate mediator, finding the hidden signals of peace.
We looked closely at the 2040s tipping point, that massive global tug-of-war where economic interconnectedness is battling against resource scarcity and the democratization of destructive tech.
We shatter the myth of the peaceful state of nature by looking at the chilling realities of chimpanzee wars and dolphin biology.
Recognizing that while we share the hardware for violence, our ability to abstract is what makes human cruelty uniquely scalable.
And finally, we explored the very metaphysics of existence, realizing that while the friction of duality is mathematically inevitable, the violent resolution of that friction is not.
It truly is a remarkable synthesis of technology, biology, and philosophy.
It really is.
And the final thought offered in this material is incredibly poignant. It suggests that in a universe fundamentally defined by contrasts, the single greatest contrast of all is between who we are as a species right now and who we could be.
That is beautiful.
Artificial intelligence, if aligned correctly, can be the tool that helps us navigate the intense friction of existence. It can help us map the safest paths across the landscape.
But it all comes down to the topography.
It all comes back to the data. It comes back to what we are feeding it right now.
Which brings me directly back to you, the person listening to this right now.
Yeah, think about this.
We started this deep dive by talking about a mirror one that doesn't just reflect, but synthesizes, remembers, and amplifies.
The active mirror.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. I want you to think about the human data you personally generate. Your specific digital exhaust.
Every single day.
The emails you write when you're frustrated, the comments you leave on social platforms, the articles you choose to click on, the way you speak to people in traffic or in online forums.
If an advanced AI were trained solely on your personal digital footprint for the last 12 months,
What kind of topography would it map out? What kind of world would it predict and build?
that's a heavy question.
Would it build a world of deep craters and battle lines, fueled by the friction of outrage and quick reactions? Or would it predict a world of bridges, built on a foundation of empathy, patience, and dialogue?
Because ultimately, as we step into this new era, you aren't just looking into the mirror anymore.
You are the one building it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep learning. We'll see you next time.